The Trump regime's renewed push to expand the power and presence of the Department of Homeland Security, particularly Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has produced consequences that reach far beyond immigration enforcement. What critics describe as an aggressive and racially targeted crackdown has reshaped daily life in many American cities, fostering fear, destabilizing communities, and triggering a cascading public health crisis. In Minnesota, these effects have become starkly visible. Immigrants and citizens alike are retreating into their homes, avoiding hospitals, skipping work, and foregoing basic civic life in response to what many perceive as an unaccounted paramilitary-style force operating with expanded authority and minimal oversight. At the center of this shift is a dramatic reinterpretation of ICE's arrest powers. An internal memo circulated to ICE personnel expanded the agency's ability to make warrantless arrests, broadening the definition of when agents may detain individuals suspected of being undocumented. Instead of requiring evidence that a person might flee the legal process, the new guidance allows agents to act whenever they believe someone is unlikely to remain at the scene. In practice, this lowers the threshold for arrest to mere presence and suspicion, encouraging wide-ranging sweeps rather than targeted operations backed by judicial warrants. This policy change coincided with the deployment of thousands of masked federal agents into cities across the country. In Minnesota, the escalation followed guidance allowing agents to enter homes only with administrative warrants, documents not reviewed or approved by judges. Shortly thereafter, federal agents shot and killed 2 people during enforcement actions in Minneapolis. Although the president later falsely claimed that he would de-escalate, the damage had already been done. For many residents, the message was unmistakable. Federal power would be exercised aggressively, visibly, and with lethal consequences. In fact, the number of immigrants with no criminal record are now the largest group in U.S. immigration detention centers that turn a huge profit. The result of the rounding up of non-white Americans has been a profound breakdown of trust and paralysis of everyday life. Community leaders and healthcare providers report that people are afraid to leave their homes, regardless of immigration status. Individuals are cancelling routine checkups, postponing surgeries, and ignoring symptoms that would normally send them to urgent care. Pregnant patients are laboring at home. Diabetic patients are rationing insulin. Injured and acutely ill people are choosing fear over treatment. This is not merely anecdotal panic. It is a measurable public health emergency. When people delay care, chronic conditions worsen, preventable complications multiply, and mortality rises. Healthcare professionals in Minnesota warn that the long-term consequences will include avoidable deaths, increased emergency crises, and severe strain on already stretched medical systems. As one ICU nurse put it, when patients stop receiving medications and treatment, they will die. What makes this crisis especially alarming is that it extends beyond undocumented immigrants. Legal permanent residents, naturalized citizens, and even U.S.-born people of color report fear of being detained based on appearance, accent, or association. Unfamiliar vehicles parked near clinics or hospitals are enough to keep people away. The chilling effect is so pervasive that even healthcare workers fear being targeted. DHS audits of hospital employment records have added to the anxiety, prompting some hospital staff to prepare contingency plans in case they are suddenly detained. In response, communities have been forced to improvise parallel systems of care. Clinics have organized rapid response teams to deliver medications, treat wounds, and check on high-risk patients in their homes. Telehealth services have expanded beyond their intended scope. Volunteers are now delivering food and baby formula and prescriptions. In one striking example, doctors conducted a home visit for a woman in active labor who was too afraid to take an ambulance, arranging discreet transport to a hospital only after ensuring she would not encounter federal agents. These extraordinary measures reflect resilience and solidarity, but they also underscore a serious dysfunction. In a functioning democracy, people do not need underground healthcare networks to survive. Hospitals do not need to reassure patients that seeking emergency care is safe. Nurses do not leave sealed envelopes with union representatives containing instructions in case they disappear. The climate of fear is compounded by scenes of federal force deployed against civilian protest. In Portland, demonstrations against the immigration crackdown were met with tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, and chemical munitions, even when crowds included children and elderly people. Witnesses describe indiscriminate use of force as protesters attempted to retreat. Legal advocates argue that this pattern reflects retaliatory violence rather than crowd control, prompting federal judges to consider restraining orders limiting DHS tactics. The reappearance of these tactics, tear gas and the like, reinforces the perception that DHS and ICE are operating less as civilian law enforcement agencies and more as occupying forces. Critics argue this approach amounts to governing through terror, using fear to compel submission, silence dissent, and drive marginalized communities into invisibility. Some have gone further, describing the strategy as a form of ethnic cleansing by attrition, not mass deportation alone, but the systemic making of life unlivable for targeted populations so that they disappear from public space. Whether or not one accepts that framing, the outcomes are undeniable. People are hiding, cities are losing workers, patients, and visitors. America is becoming, in the eyes of many foreign observers and would-be travelers, volatile and unsafe. An online X-poll of 12,000 respondents found that roughly 80% said they would not travel to the US, citing safety concerns, political conditions, and fear of detention or scrutiny at the border. As a result of Trump's dictatorship, a growing number of nations have issued travel warnings to the US, and many would-be visitors have called for an all-out boycott of travel to the country, with some even calling it a hostile state. A nation cannot claim to value freedom, health, or the rule of law while normalizing masked agents, warrantless arrests, executions, and widespread fear of seeking medical care. The Minnesota crisis reveals what happens when immigration enforcement is untethered from judicial oversight and human consequence. It produces not order but dysfunction, social, medical, and moral. And it leaves communities doing what they can to keep one another alive in the shadow of the state. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.